I remember the day I got the call about Grandma's land like it was yesterday. My grandmother had passed away quietly a few weeks earlier, and now, the property was mine. It felt surreal, holding that deed in my hands. More than just paper, it was a piece of my past, a place where I'd spent countless summers chasing fireflies beneath the old oak tree. The land wasn't much to some people, just wildflowers, tall grass, and patches of earth stretching beyond the eye. But to me, it was everything. That oak tree had been our family's silent witness, its branches heavy with memories. It stood proud and alone, shading the ground where Grandma had taught me to read and where I learned what family meant. After losing my parents, this land was my last anchor, a tether to my roots when everything else felt like it was slipping away. So, when I drove up last Saturday, heart pounding, I expected quiet, maybe the soft hum of the wind or the rustle of leaves. Instead, I was met with roaring engines and shouting voices. Construction vehicles tore through the field where wildflowers once danced. Men in hard hats swarmed, dismantling what Grandma had preserved for decades. I pulled up to a small group, hoping to stop the chaos. A woman in a crisp blazer stepped forward. "I'm Karen, HOA president," she said sharply. Her eyes didn't soften when I told her I was the rightful owner. "The property's been reclaimed legally. There's nothing you can do." I blinked. Reclaimed? By whom? I never signed anything. My voice cracked with disbelief. Karen shrugged, cold and unyielding. "All paperwork is in order. The developers have full rights. It's been cleared through proper channels. But this is my family's land," I said, anger rising like a storm inside me. "I inherited it. How can you just erase that?" She didn't flinch. "HOA rules are clear. Agreements were made before your time. You'll have to speak to your lawyer." I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stare at the bulldozers carving up my past. How could they do this without telling me? Without even a warning? I felt the ground shift beneath me, not just the earth being ripped apart but the foundation of my family's legacy. Something wasn't right. I swallowed hard, determination settling like a stone in my chest. I was going to find out what had happened. Whatever it took, I wouldn't let them steal what was mine. I went to the courthouse first thing Monday morning, hoping to find answers. At the records office, I asked about the ownership and any recent permits. The clerk's face was polite but tight. "You'll want to look at these files," she said, sliding a thick folder across the counter. "But be warned, some documents might not be straightforward." I flipped through the papers, surveys, deeds, agreements. A few signatures looked familiar, but many didn't. "Who signed these?" I muttered. "This isn't my family's handwriting." A man behind me cleared his throat. "Those agreements were filed under the HOA's name," he said quietly. "They've been pushing this development for years." I turned to see a neighbor I recognized, Mrs. Palmer, the woman who'd lived next to Grandma for decades. "Are you telling me they did this without my consent?" I asked, voice shaking. Mrs. Palmer nodded, eyes wary. "Most folks around here don't want to get involved. Karen's got connections. She's made sure no one speaks out." I left the courthouse with more questions than answers. At home, a thick envelope waited on my porch, no return address. Inside were legal threats, cease and desist orders, fines for supposed violations on my property. The HOA was squeezing me already. One evening, my phone rang. "You're making trouble," a low voice warned. "Back off, or things will get worse." I sat frozen, the weight of isolation settling in. But then, a knock at my door. It was Mr. Jenkins, an elderly man with kind eyes and a slow, steady voice. "I remember your grandmother," he said. "She cared for that land like it was part of her soul. If you need help, I'm here." Relief sparked inside me. I called a local attorney recommended by a friend. After hearing my story, she said, "This sounds like corruption. I'll dig into it." Even so, the fear gnawed at me. How could I fight against people with power and money? The thought of losing everything made my chest tighten. But as the days passed, a stubborn flame grew within me. This was more than land. It was about standing up against injustice, protecting my family's name. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't giving up, not now. I spent hours poring over those documents, each page heavier than the last. Then I saw it, the forged signatures on the property deeds. They looked like someone had hurriedly copied Grandma's name. I held the papers up to the light, tracing the shaky lines. My heart sank. I found fake survey reports too, maps that didn't match the land at all. And the notarizations, something felt off about them, like they were rubber-stamped without proper scrutiny. My hands trembled as I thought back to Grandma's voice, firm and gentle. "Promise me you'll never let go of this land," she had said, gripping my hand. "It's more than dirt and trees. It's our history." Her words echoed louder now than ever. I faced Karen at the next community meeting. The room buzzed with tension as she stepped up to the podium, all smiles and false warmth. "There's no fraud here," she declared, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "All documents are valid. Any claims to the contrary are baseless and defamatory." I stood, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those signatures are forged. The surveys are fake. You're destroying my family's legacy for profit." She laughed coldly. "Legacy? Your family had nothing to do with this property for years. The HOA has handled this with complete transparency." Her words stung. Neighbors glanced away, some avoiding my eyes. But a few whispered among themselves, nodding. "I won't let you get away with this," I said, gripping the edge of the chair. "Not just for me, but for everyone you've silenced." Karen's smirk faltered for a split second. "You're making a mistake." That night, anger fueled my every thought. But beneath it, a stubborn resolve took root. This wasn't just about land or paperwork. It was about standing up to corruption, exposing lies, and fighting for truth. Slowly, neighbors began approaching me quietly, sharing stories of fines, threats, and unfair treatment. Fear kept them silent before, but now, with one voice rising, others dared to speak. I realized then, this fight was bigger than me. Together, maybe we could turn the tide. The phone rang late one night. I barely answered before a cold voice hissed, "Stop stirring trouble, or you'll regret it." I hung up, heart pounding. The next morning, my mailbox was smashed, letters torn and scattered across the driveway. I heard whispers around the neighborhood, false complaints filed against me for nonsense like property violations and disturbing the peace. It felt like an invisible war, with shadows trying to push me out. Sleep became a stranger. Every creak at night sent my thoughts spiraling. Was someone watching? Would they come for me? I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah, in a cramped office. "We need to act fast," she said firmly. "I'll file injunctions to halt construction immediately. We'll push for a court order to freeze all activity on the land." I swallowed my fear. "And the fraud? We'll request full discovery. All their documents, emails, communications. Anything hidden will come to light." Court dates came and went, and I found myself lost in a whirlwind of filings, hearings, and meetings. Karen's team dragged their feet, calling for delays and confusing motions. It felt like running a race with my legs tied. Neighbors started talking. Mrs. Jenkins from down the street shared how Karen fined her for planting flowers outside HOA guidelines. Mr. Lee mentioned his fence was painted the wrong color, he got a citation. Slowly, people found their voices. One evening, Sarah looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. You're not the scared woman who walked in here months ago. I can't be, I said quietly. This is Grandma's legacy. I owe her that fight. At times, exhaustion washed over me, but I felt myself growing stronger. Fear still lurked in the edges, but resilience took center stage. Every legal victory, no matter how small, was a step toward justice. Through the struggle, I felt a healing too, like reclaiming the land was reclaiming a piece of myself. Grandma's voice echoed in my mind, hold on tight. Fight for what's right. And I wasn't letting go. I was sorting through Grandma's old chest when I found it. A folded, yellowed letter tucked beneath a stack of faded photographs. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Inside, she detailed an agreement made decades ago, one that clearly affirmed her ownership and outlined protections against any unauthorized sale or development. This is it, I whispered. Proof. The thrill of discovery tangled with a knot of anxiety. Could this really change everything? Would the court accept a letter written so long ago? I knew this might be my last hope. I called Sarah right away. I found something, an original document, a letter from Grandma herself. It could prove the land belongs to us. She sounded cautious but hopeful. Bring it in tomorrow. We'll strategize how to use it. That evening, I met with Sarah and a few neighbors I'd come to trust, Mrs. Palmer, Mr. Lee. We spread the letter out, eyes scanning every word. This could expose the fraud, Sarah said. If we present this, it will challenge every forged signature and fake survey. But then, the room shifted. Jenny, someone I'd counted on for support, cleared her throat. I think you're making a mistake, she said hesitantly. Karen's offered me a deal. She says if I testify against you, I could avoid fines and keep my home. I stared at her, disbelief cutting deep. You'd betray all of us? After everything? Her eyes flicked away. I have a family to protect. The sting of betrayal was sharp and sudden. For a moment, I felt utterly alone. How could someone I trusted turn against me like this? But then, anger replaced the hurt. Fine, I said, voice steady despite the ache. If you want to stand with them, that's your choice. I'll fight this battle on my own if I have to. Late that night, I sat alone, turning the letter over in my hands. Trust had cracked, but my resolve hadn't. This struggle had taught me that people aren't always who you think they are, and sometimes you have to stand strong, even when isolated. I whispered to myself, this is bigger than betrayal. It's about justice, and I won't stop. I knew I couldn't fight this alone anymore. So I called a meeting, sent out flyers, talked to neighbors one by one. When the night came, the community center buzzed with nervous energy. People filled the seats, faces etched with worry and hope. I stood before them, heart pounding. We've all been hurt by this, I said. Not just me. Karen and the developers have trampled over all of us, ignoring our voices and breaking the law. A man near the back spoke up, voice shaky. They fined me for fixing my fence. Said I needed permission, but no one answered my calls. A woman nodded, tears glistening. My garden was destroyed without warning. They don't care about us. Stories poured out, quiet suffering finally finding a voice. I looked around and saw faces hardening with resolve. Together, we're stronger, I told them. Let's stand united. We can stop this. That night, someone shared a video from the meeting online. It spread fast, neighbors, friends, even strangers commenting, sharing. Soon, a local reporter contacted me, eager to cover our story. Karen's grip started to slip. One afternoon, a retired judge came by. I'm here to help, he said quietly. This kind of corruption won't stand. A city council member called too, promising to raise the issue at the next meeting. Still, exhaustion crept in. Doubts whispered, was this fight worth it? Could we really win? But every time I felt weak, my family and friends reminded me why I started. Your courage is our strength, my sister said, squeezing my hand. This was no longer just about my land, it was about all of us, fighting for fairness and respect. The community had become a family, bound by hope and determination. And that gave me the strength to keep going. The courtroom felt suffocating as I took my seat, heart hammering so loud I was sure everyone could hear. I gripped the edge of the chair, trying to steady my breathing while the judge called the session to order. Silence wrapped the room like a heavy blanket. Karen's lawyer was sharp, her voice dripping with skepticism as she attacked every piece of evidence I brought forward. These signatures could be forgeries, she sneered. How can we be certain of their authenticity? Sarah leaned in, calm but fierce. We have expert testimony confirming the forgeries, Your Honor. The forged deeds have been conclusively linked to the defendant's family. When my grandmother's letter was read aloud, I felt tears prick at my eyes. That letter, my grandmother wrote it herself. It's more than words, it's her promise, her fight to protect this land. Neighbors took the stand, Mrs. Palmer describing the destruction, Mr. Lee recounting the threats. Their voices shook with honesty, lending weight to our claim. At one point, I was called to speak. My throat tightened, but I forced myself forward. This land is my family's legacy. It's where I learned about strength, love, and home. Losing it means losing a part of myself. The judge listened intently, his gaze steady. Hours later, after all the testimony and evidence, he leaned forward. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The land is legally yours. All development activities must cease immediately. Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave. I slumped back, exhausted but triumphant. As I looked around, I caught Karen's face, a mixture of shock and fury. But for me, it was closure. I whispered, "We did it, Grandma. We protected our home." The courtroom's tension dissolved into a quiet victory, one I'd carry in my heart forever. The judge's ruling felt like the end of a long nightmare, but it wasn't over yet. A few days after the verdict, my phone started ringing off the hook. "This is Detective Harris," one voice said. "We're investigating the HOA president and several developers for fraud and embezzlement. Your testimony was crucial." I sat back, stunned. "You mean Karen?" "Yes. We've uncovered bank records and forged documents linking her to illegal dealings. It's bigger than we thought." News cameras soon showed up outside my door. Reporters asked questions I never imagined answering on live TV. The neighborhood felt alive with hope. Neighbors stopped me on the street to say, "Thank you for standing up." One afternoon, I watched a news segment showing Karen being led away in handcuffs, her face a mix of fury and defeat. The HOA board dissolved, officials resigned, and lawsuits piled up. I remember Mrs. Palmer pulling me into a hug. "You didn't just save your family's land," she whispered. "You freed us all." The community began to heal. Gardens were replanted, fences repaired, and a new sense of trust blossomed. People who once hid behind closed doors now shared stories and laughter. Still, I carry the scars, the sleepless nights, the betrayals, the fear. But alongside those wounds is a renewed strength, a belief that justice, though slow, can prevail. I often sit under that old oak tree, thinking about everything we lost and gained. This victory wasn't just mine, it was ours. A cleansing of corruption and a promise that this community can rise, stronger and kinder than before. I stepped onto the land for the first time since the court ruling, the scent of fresh earth and grass filling my lungs. Neighbors gathered around with shovels and gloves, ready to help. Mrs. Palmer smiled warmly. "Let's bring this place back to life," she said. Together, we cleared debris, broken fences, scattered trash, and planted young trees where destruction had been worst. I watched as little hands dug holes, planting hope alongside the saplings. "This land belongs to all of us," I told them, my voice steady. The sun warmed my face as I felt something shift inside me. After months of fear and anger, I was healing too. This place was more than soil and roots, it was where I reclaimed my identity and found peace. My sister came by with a picnic basket. "Look how far you've come," she said, handing me a sandwich. We laughed, sharing stories beneath the old oak tree. Friends joined in, celebrating small victories, the first wildflowers returning, a repaired fence, a clean path through the garden. "I never thought this day would come," I admitted, eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you for standing by me." Mrs. Jenkins nodded. "We had to believe in you, in us." That night, as I sat alone watching the stars, I realized how much this fight changed me. From uncertain and alone to strong and surrounded. The community that once feared Karen's shadow now stood united. I whispered, "This is just the beginning." The land, my family, my neighbors, all healing together, ready for whatever comes next. Looking back on everything, the pain, the fight, the victories, and the losses, I'm overwhelmed by how much this journey changed me. It wasn't just about reclaiming land. It was about finding courage I didn't know I had and learning that persistence can break even the strongest walls. I've learned that standing up for what's right isn't easy. It takes strength, patience, and sometimes facing betrayal. But the power of community, the way people come together to support one another, is what made the difference. Alone, I might have faltered. Together, we were unstoppable. Grandma's legacy wasn't just the land. It was the spirit she passed down, the belief that justice matters and that every voice counts. I vow to honor her by protecting this land and standing up whenever I see injustice. I see a future filled with hope, not just for me, but for everyone here. The community that was once silent now speaks loudly. We've grown stronger because we faced adversity head-on, and that strength will carry us forward. Sometimes, I think about those darkest storms we weathered. But as Grandma always said, sometimes the darkest storms bring the most beautiful music. And she was right. From the chaos, a new harmony has emerged. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: never be afraid to fight for what's yours. Stand tall, speak out, and remember, you're never truly alone. Because sometimes, the greatest victories come when we refuse to give up.